galaxies. And the 12th house is very much about our karma, right? It's the karma that's like under the surface that's lurking there. And I actually heard this quote once. I'm not exactly sure where I remember it from, but our karma is essentially just memories. It's memories that are still charged. And, just to kind of backtrack where we were talking is like emotions are actually so valuable. They flow through us. They're meant to flow through us. And when they get stuck in our body, they become stagnant. And that it holds on to certain feelings and memories that are tied to in our life. And essentially that becomes karma, right? And if we're talking about even those memories being passed down through the collective, we can even say that this is tied to multiple generations before us, right? And how those memories are passed down to us through our bodies and are just like hidden below the surface. And you feel them, but you don't know what it is. The 12th house, I feel like, is this ambiguous cloud. And we've talked about this, is like, there's something going on here and I don't know what it is. And to kind of go back to the story of like the dinner party, it's like going to a dinner party and being like, I feel so good when you first get there. And then something happens along the way and you're like, I picked up on something that I don't know what it is. And I feel some sort of way about it, or I feel like I don't know what to do with it. I'm carrying some emotion around it. It's that energy. It's like somewhere along the way, some energetic force like seeped in through the cracks and you were able to pick up on it. It's that Pisces energy of just like being a sponge and like the dissolution of the self with like the dissolution of everything else. And that's so much. It's so much. And something that really helps, that we've started talking about is this healing access, right? The 12th house and the 6th house, even the Pisces energy and the Virgo energy, they can kind of counteract each other. So, when you are feeling that Pisces pull of like absorbing everything and picking up on all the stimulation, Virgo is that sign of like discernment. It is that sign of like, okay, no, I'm going to put these structures in place so that way I can protect myself and I can be healthy, and then I can have the boundaries that I need to bring me through my life and to focus my energy and organize, prioritize. And so they have this very like healing dynamic with each other that's like super important. And so what I have on the screen is the Astrological Houses. It's a wheel that's oftentimes like used and referred to a lot in astrology. And I actually took this from Kelly Sturgis. But this is a really great reference when you're learning about the houses and you're learning about, what's happening in each of these areas of your life. So when we're talking about the planets, we're talking about the action. And when we're talking about the signs, it's talking about like the energy in which it's going to flow, right? Is it going to happen in a very Virgo way where you're going to be very observant and you're going to analyze and you're going to, be very discerning, and also come from an energy of like, how am I going to serve? How am I going to make an impact? And is it going to come from a Pisces way where I'm going to like lose myself in this and feel really empathetic and feel a lot of emotions and be romantic about it and feel very creative and blend yourself with everything, be very flow, like that mutable water energy, whereas the house system is really about where these energies are going to manifest. Is it going to be in your health? Is it going to be in your routines, your workplace, where you serve? Or is it going to be on the 12th house axis, right? The 12th house is about things you can't see, things you pick up on, but you don't necessarily know what it is. It's
or where it came from.
It's that kind of the 90% that's underneath the water of the iceberg, right? You only see 10% of the iceberg, but underneath that water is like this expansive, ambiguous, ever growing, ever changing house. That's the 12th house, you know? And so, yeah, we're really coming together to talk about this access and what it's all about. And really, Alaina, me and you just like, we go off on astrology.
Yeah, we rip.
And I think it's that like inner sag that we have, that we want to just like go into this and expand in every single direction. So we could just like bounce from here and bounce from there, and that's how that energy is going to flow. But why we're doing this and why we're recording this is because there's so many gems that come from just us just riffing off of each other, and us just like, well, what about this? And what about this? And I just had this, you know, come to me, and we're channeling source essentially through this paradigm of looking at ourselves. And it's such a beautiful way of discovering more about yourself, you know, diving into the collective energy and how to understand how the energies flow into each other. Yeah, we can just go into so many aspects. And that's what's beautiful about astrology, is that it is this ever-growing, ever-changing system that you can't really get to the bottom of. It's like the 12th house, you know, it's like you can keep uncovering all this hidden information that you don't know, but you're going to keep going, and it's going to be this deep pool where you're going to get gems and gold, and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, yes, this needs to be given to the collective. This needs to be channeled out to people so that they can help themselves. And so, yeah, I'm just like so lit up about talking about astrology all the time. And, you know, me and you got together and we're like, let's talk about the 6th and the 12th house.
Yeah,
and
our theme for whatever reason this week.
Yeah.
Well, it was stemmed from really, I mean, what you were just saying about how it's like there's so many different like avenues that you can go down, and because we were both exploring our charts in different systems, and that's where we started, you know, because we both planets moved into the 12th house in different systems, and we were exploring ourselves through that, through those expressions. And you know, that was really what sparked the whole conversation about this axis that's like connected to service and connected to healing and connected to, man, I always think of like embodiment. And I like before we like hit record, we were talking about like really like emotions and how they'll manifest in your body, and that when like we enter these spaces, it could be a party, or you were talking about the farmer's market, and that whenever we feel like so full of like emotion, that water, we tend to go and exercise our bodies in some way, be it like breathing or walking or some kind of movement to kind of like reset our nervous systems. And I just like, I always feel like the water and earth axes are so much about like what emotion, like what like energy is moving through me right now, and like anger, sadness, joy, and how am I embodying it? Where especially sometimes like with like 12th house, we don't know where it came from most of the time. And because it's the well, it's like the source, it's expansive, and we don't know. And like sometimes we don't need to know. It doesn't need to have a meaning or a connection. It's just, okay, I'm gonna like serve myself and move through this by, you know, what is something that is in my routine that I know always grounds me back into my body, this like mind, body, spirit axes of connecting that greater expansive space to something livable in our bodies, something like that, a learned embodied lesson. And that's something I love about like the 6th, like water earth axes, but also this specific house, because it relates to service and our body and how we feel, and those greater like karmic unknown reasons for things showing up in our lives.
Yeah, that's so powerful. The water and the earth axes. I mean, if you think of it just like that and how the dynamic is between those two signs, I mean, now I'm just thinking in terms of like Chinese medicine and how earth really provides that masculine structure for the water to flow, right?
Yeah.
And that water is just like this like ever growing depth that you keep pulling
Mhm.
from and keeps giving to you, and it could show you anything. It could show you your ancestors, it could show you traumas, it could
Yeah.
show you, you know, something that's happening on the other side of the world. It's this kind of, yeah, this universal energy that everyone is connected to, that is channeled through you, through your vessel, through your earthly
Mhm.
vessel. It's so powerful. And yeah, I do really want to talk specifically about service, because I sent you this article about how many people had
Yeah.
these really strong like 12th house, placements. And yeah, it was kind of like they needed to dive deep into their 12th house to understand how they were going to serve the collective consciousness,
Mhm.
right? And sometimes I almost feel like the 12th house is what you are actually being given by spirit to serve
Yeah.
as, and the sixth
Mhm.
house is like what you're choosing consciously to serve, like
Oh, I
who you're
love
choosing,
that.
like who are your clients.
Mhm.
And then your 12th house is like, okay, this is actually the clients that you're going to serve, but you just don't know it yet. You just don't know it yet. And it's just like, it's not until maybe you go through some sort of transit through your 12th house, or
Right.
it's your perfection year, or you just go through
Yeah.
some deep, I don't know, some deep 12th house shit that you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. This is why
Mm.
all of these pieces in my life connected, because I'm meant to serve people in this way.
Wow.
Yeah, it's that like hidden underneath the surface thing that's happening.
Mhm.
It's the covert plan, essentially. Whereas
Yeah.
the
It's the
six,
undercurrent, right? Like
yeah,
it's the undercurrent. Like what's that like underground theme that's like running through everything that I do, perhaps.
hmm,
And it's always going to look different than, or I mean, like speaking of it, like going from that water to the earth presentation, it like you said, it's going both ways. It might not look exactly the way that we will think it
hmm,
will. And that's kind of like that boundless like fog of like, well, I don't know where it's going to come from. And I'm not sure what it's going to look like. But
yeah.
sometimes those are like or in my experience so far, at least the things that come unexpectedly end up being like the gems.
Hmm. Something that just came to me was like that quote from Rumi that says, "What you are seeking is seeking you." I feel like it's
Mm.
that. I feel like it's that. It's just like the sixth house is what you are seeking and what you
Mm.
choose to to do every single day. It's
Mm.
your routine, it's your work, it's what you choose to do for work, it's what you choose to do for your health. And the 12th house is like, actually, it's what's seeking you. It's
Yeah.
the
Wow. I
collective
love that.
consciousness that's being downloaded in you saying, hey, actually go here. I'm going to send you this intuitive ping. Go here, do this thing. And you're not going to know what it's
Mm.
connected to. But actually, covertly, the spirit realm has all of these ways that it's moving you.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's so powerful. I feel like also want to say that like the sixth house and the 12th house, I feel like are really misunderstood in astrology. They're oftentimes, you have a bunch of houses there, like people deem them as like kind of bad, like not
Yeah.
bad. I don't feel like there's a good or a bad in astrology. It's just the way that it's going to manifest in your life.
Hmm.
But oftentimes they say like the 12th house is the house of karma, and karma is seen as a bad thing when
Yeah.
actually it's this balancing system that needs to
Hmm.
happen. It's like, and it's also again like things that we don't see, may possibly something that happened in a past life needs to be balanced in this life, that's
Yeah.
then gonna show up in your 12th house.
Especially
So
too because we were both exploring in different systems like planets that we have there. And I
yeah.
mean, when a planet is there, or if it's not there, because you can look to the ruler and where that like energy is playing out in another area of your life. It like these are just things that we have to. I always think of like how the 12th house is like incarceration and things that we deem like these need to go behind the prison bars, behind like the solid gates of and
institutions.
Institutionalized, and really like nurturing whatever like planets there, whatever energy that like planet encapsulates, and nurturing that part of it and treating it like it was something that's been, for whatever reason that we don't know, karmically, past life, whatever it is, like treating it as such, as like something we like server, that term like server suffer, like using that and pulling it into the Virgo of like service, that I have to dive into this, like how you were talking about your moon being there, and like how can I not dive into my emotions and translate that to service? Like how does that not intimately relate to the way that I serve? I just, especially with planets there, it's it's like that incarcerated space. How are we going to nurture this thing that we've deemed just not good enough? This, and especially if it's an inner planet, something like that's hitting us more intimately on a day-to-day basis,
right?
That we feel like, it's quote harder for me to tap into that or express like my sun or express my moon. It could be a 12th house placement and being in that like foggy kind of haziness where it's like, how do I ground this in? How do I move it, balance it into the 6th house to really look at how this energy can be remedied?
Yeah. I mean, I just want to speak so deeply into that with my own experience of the 12th house. The reason why we started talking about this was because I messaged you. I had a ping and I was like, I'm going to message Alaina. I'm going to ask her about the 12th house, because I was looking at my Vedic chart. I saw that my moon was in Sag in the 12th house. I started doing research on it, and I was like reading things, but I was like, I want to go deeper into the 12th house. And that's what it requires you to do. It requires you to go deep with it, And I was just like, I have to understand what this is about, because there has been many moments of my life where my emotions feel like this cloud that's in the air that I can't really ground. And especially because it's in Sag, right? It's like that fiery, like mutable energy. And it's like, I have to, bring it back into like the earthy embodiment practices and discover what that's about. And especially because the moon is there, it's like the emotions and how it manifests is very much under the surface, especially if it's in the 12th house. And that's how I've felt most of my life, is like I picked up on other people's energy, or I didn't really know what my feeling was about certain things. And it really needed me to take some practices that like to ground that energy, like journaling. Journaling had just changed my life.
Me
completely,
too.
right? It's like me being able to like, okay, just write, and that's what it's like. 6th house is like, okay, again, Virgo ruled by Mercury, writing, right? Speaking into it, dancing, embodying it, like using your body to kind of just, you don't even have to use words. It's like moving your body and what that says.
Wow, I've never thought about journaling as a form of embodiment, but go on, keep going.
But I feel like it isn't like,
no, that's like a massive like
it is. Right.
Because I also journaled my whole life, and I'm like, how did I ever get anything? Like, how did I ever move through anything? Anyway, keep going. I'm just like, whoa.
For me, in my experience, that's how I've navigated having a moon in the 12th house. Is like all these like kind of hidden feelings that I wanted to like escape from, and I didn't know how to necessarily navigate, because again, the 12th house is this big, huge well that you're like, oh my God, I don't know. And you have to find ways to like take it slice by slice. And my way was like journaling, like putting that on paper. and
Yeah.
bringing it back to my body. And I actually told you this a couple days ago, where I was like in a funk and I was feeling very heavy, and I was like
Yeah.
not feeling like very in my body. I was very in like cerebral realm in my emotions, and also feeling depressed in a very Pisces like way, just like so overwhelmed by my emotional state. And I was like, okay, what can I do right now for myself to bring myself out of this? Right. And of
Mhm.
course, your emotions have a place. Your emotions have so much to give you and so much to show you. But to act out of your life through your emotions, right, to allow it to overtake you is like, it's different. That's a different state,
Mhm.
rather it informing your life, right? And so I was in the, I was in like it was taking over. And
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I need to move my body. I need to move my body. I have to go to the beach. So I took
Yeah.
my dog to the beach, and I immediately felt better. And then I came home and I was like, I have to keep moving. I have to keep, yeah, just keep taking my body and like sweating and just moving my chi. And I went on a
Mhm.
run and it felt so good. And then it's so funny, whenever I go on runs, I think this is Sag energy, because Sag energy is that like
Totally.
arrow
Forward
to
moving,
forward to,
passion. Yeah.
yes, it's that fire
Generating
that's like
heat. Yeah.
go 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 and move your body, move your legs. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it was me being able to channel all of that stuck stagnant energy into like a 6 house routine,
Mhm.
and being like, okay, this is how I can embody myself, like embody, um go into embodiment and take care of my body, like focus on wellness and all of
Yeah.
that stuff. It's like the 6th house also rules illness, right? So it's like, am I going to be stuck in knowing that I could perpetuate this feeling by not moving? And I
Mhm.
feel like that 12th house is the unconscious. Yeah, this is happening, and then the 6th house brings it into the conscious state, where in
Yeah.
that moment I was like, okay, I need to move. And it
Yeah.
then brought it to the conscious, and I was like, if I don't move, I'm going to continue feeling this way, and I
Mhm.
don't want that. And
Mhm.
so it just solidified that axis even more for me, of like, okay, I understand now what I need to do when I feel certain things, when I feel this
Yeah.
heavy. And of
Nurture
course,
yourself. Yeah.
yeah, with the
Your
full moon
moon,
in
your moon is there.
Taurus.
Yeah. Nurturing through. Yeah. That's.
Yeah, I mean, even with the full moon in Taurus, it's like asking us even more
Hmm.
to anything that comes up emotionally, all the water energy, especially from
Yeah.
Scorpio, the heavy, intense feelings that come up. How can you then balance it with being in your body, rooting down, anchoring down what
Mhm.
things serve you, what things don't serve you? Right. That's
Mhm.
very much like full moon in Taurus.
Yeah.
And it's a powerful time. I mean,
Mhm.
somehow I feel like the 6th house and the 12th house are connected to that. I mean, yeah,
Oh,
it's like
definitely.
the water and the earth again, just a
Yeah.
different flavor of it.
Yeah. I love that you brought up journaling earlier and writing, because I've done that for my whole life too. And it's making me think to like how when we write, it's such like an on-demand thing that we've done since we were like young, and it becomes
Mhm.
like an unconscious action, like driving. um I don't know about you, but like when I'm driving and sometimes I'm listening to something, but then I just start like, I'm like, oh man, I need to like put a voice note on, because I start like getting all these like aha moments,
Yes,
because we're
happens
like
to me
in
all.
that unconscious space. And I feel like the bridge between like the 12th and the 6th house is like, could be like embodiment things, or maybe it's the bridge between all the houses, honestly. Like, but how do we like actually take
Mhm.
action between each of these themes of, I'm going to start writing, and it's like an on demand, unconscious action that I end up getting all this intel from my unconscious, subconscious mind that
Mhm.
I'm taking from like that Piscean boundless realm into like like into form, into like Virgo
Mm-hmm.
is form, into something with boundaries, into something language, something that comes from our vocal cords, words, that
Yes.
it's like from the well to wellness, like the deep well
Mm.
into like how we feel well,
Yeah, the
It's
well to
like
wellness. Yes.
from the well to wellness. And it's like these, yeah, that's that interesting, like taking action on like how can we take action in any of the axes between any of the houses to really like be human and process those emotions, those things that are just here to visit us, and they
Mm-hmm.
come and go all the time throughout the day, and it's not always ours. And some, it speaks to just like, well, how can I dig into my daily routine to really like move through it and not
Yeah.
necessarily need to understand or place a meaning on it, or like, why am I feeling
Mm-hmm.
this way? Sometimes we just feel it, and we only know what the gem is on the other side from processing it, something physically. Is it writing? Is it exercising?
Mm-hmm.
And that's like not, we don't need to understand it all. It's like, I feel
Mm.
like part of that Pisces wisdom is like that we have so many other things, um, of our like grander levels of like our soul, if you will, that are
Yeah.
doing work for us in other
Mm-hmm.
ways, that we don't need to understand it all or give meaning to every little piece of it, for us to have moved through something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's so powerful. It's kind of bringing up a lot for me around, it's bringing up a lot for me around, I want to say just like work in general, because
Yeah.
I want to take it from like a sixth house standpoint of people leaning so deeply into the sixth house. Like imagine someone like super Virgo and just like constantly always, you know, being in their body and being in these like practices and being very rigid with them, right? And
Mental, like
uh,
the Mercury ruler.
yes, yes, and it's like there's no room for flow. It's just like
Mm,
it's just what you know, and it's the physical, tangible things, the daily life, and I feel like that's very much about like earthy, like just living on Earth. Like sixth house is like the Earth human experience,
yeah, yeah.
and and yeah, and when you write and you're you know eating food or you're taking care of your body, you're
Mm,
exercising, you're very much in your yeah, very much experiencing what it's like to be human.
yeah.
And oftentimes when people are so in their like workflow or they're in their daily lives, they kind of lose touch with like the flow of everything else, with the
Hmm.
collective energy. And
Yeah,
a way to kind of remedy that is to tap into the flow, right?
yeah,
Is to
yeah.
meditate, is to go away and have a spiritual pilgrimage for yourself. When you've experienced
Hmm.
like the hardest, deepest things in human experience, like a human can feel,
Yeah.
you do want to almost escape and you want to retreat from that and you want
Yeah.
to understand like your reasoning, your purpose being in this life.
Mm,
I know that like I felt I've experienced that. I'm sure you have too, where you almost feel like the 12th house is like the precipice of a crisis.
mm.
Like you're going through like a crisis and you're like, I don't know what this is, but I'm being called to go this way. I'm being
Yeah.
called to be in isolation or to go deeper through myself through meditation, to
Mm,
explore my inner world, to explore things I don't know.
hmm.
And that's very much being in the spirit realm, being in like a completely different universe than sixth
Yeah.
house, being in your body, going to work every single day.
Yeah. I think it
Yeah.
also speaks to finding those things, if to make it like, I guess, like grounded in Virgo and those practical day-to-day things that that we engage in, and like bridging that connection between like not just being in like work, like that analytical to heady space, but finding those those things that we do that like feel like flow, you know, like when you're like writing something or creating something or doing something and the time passes by so quickly, or you're like, where'd all those words spill out from? Making more time for that in our day, and that as a practice and like as a ritual and as something to come back to, you know, just to tell reality, like, I love doing this thing, send me more of it. And especially when like connecting that like flow to service, it will send you more, more of like more things that you love to do that activate that flow and that axes, or activate the flow between the axes. Because that's like I feel like that's a grounded way to get out of acts that are just too in our head. It's like, well, what do I do that makes me, that the time passes by fast, or you know, like us having this conversation when it's like it just flows so naturally. Those things, you know, that can be service too.
Yeah, no, definitely. And again, I feel like this is even a very 12th house experience of me and you just kind of falling into it and being like, well, let's just talk, because this is something we're passionate about and we can just like talk about it and forever, and let's just see how, you know, we can put it out there and just whatever, you know. And it's like releasing that passion, releasing that connection that we have to something that we feel on a very visceral human experience level, and then we're like, okay, let's just dive deep into it with the 12th house, and who knows what's gonna happen with it.
No, I remember when we were voice messaging about it, I was like, man, I feel like I can't start talking about the 12th house without feeling, you know, without just like it's something to experience, and almost witness manifest in that earth into like the body, and how it manifests in our wellness and our body and our mental health, and you know, all those places. Because it's just it's no surprise to me that we were like, wow, we should share about this, because things are born from that place. They're born from that well space,
right? Because if you look at the wheel, the 12th house, what comes after that is the first. It's birth. It's the you. It's like what comes out of that is service, and like you being the one to serve. It's very special. I feel like being able to even connect like the houses going into it, right? Like I was even looking at like the 11th house going into the 12th house, and how they really do. I mean, I love looking at astrology. It's like so dynamic, you know, and that it can have a little bit of themes of like the houses before and houses after, and it's just like, or like the signs after. It's kind of this dance between the two, and that there's not really, you know, I feel like there is a way to connect it all, especially with the 12th house, you know. It's like, because the 11th house to me is about also serving the community. It's about being able to, you know, have a project that serves humanity. And the 12th house going into that is like, okay, what are some things that can serve humanity but are just almost like hidden underneath the surface? That's like that undercurrent that you don't see. And
we need to serve ourselves first, you know. It's like with a planet there, it's like, okay, I'm picking this thing up and taking it with me where I go, because it's like, if I don't make this thing lived and actionable and deinstitutionalize it, then it's only going to like suffer and fester inside of me. So how do I bring this into my eye and bear it to my community, or, you know, make it important to myself again, you know?
That reminds me as well of like very Scorpio. It's like the death and rebirth that happens there. You know, like you almost needing to, you know, have a part of yourself be willing to go that deep, that part of yourself that wants to go and kind of discover what's underneath that undercurrent, and transforming from that experience and being like, okay, here's how I can serve my community. This is how I can take what I've learned while being on this, you know, retreat or being in this moment of spiritual development, and bring that back into, okay, how can I then channel that? How can then I put that into a structure that then helps more people? And
go ahead.
No, I was just like thinking that also really connects with the sixth house as well, is like channeling all that like information that comes up to the surface into a very sixth house structured service, essentially.
Yeah. As you were speaking, I was thinking of just like an example from my own life of kind of like how the service manifests almost, because when like so we were talking about how we had both been, I just like timing was cool on this because you messaged me about the 12th house, but we had both been exploring like our Vedic charts, and in that chart my sun is in the 12th house. And I always found it interesting as like a kid growing up. I've always like tutored people or like been like someone to help someone learn something. But I was always automatically like my teachers and other people would see like the way I shined, like in, you know, like how my son is expressing. They would always place me with the kids that were struggling the most with whatever. I was like a writing and reading tutor. And this was like in elementary school. And like, so when I was like learning about my like son being there, I was thinking like, wow, that's, and even like, I feel like sometimes my personal interests too, I'm always looking at like the person that's being perceived as the weakest link. Like, cause that's how strong like the foundation of something really is. So I've always put my attention there. So it's interesting, like seeing, and then it like as service that's manifested as me, like through leadership, like taking that person and being like, all right, let's work, or let's like culture your skills and help you not feel like you're behind. All these things that I feel like can get thrown into the 12th house, like we incarcerate the things that we get insecure about or that are deemed at a young age, like we're behind on something, or we get like ashamed of it. And I've always like it, just thinking back to like that childhood time of being called forth, and like that natural default shine was like, can you serve this person who's like more behind on, you know what I mean?
I get you.
So it's just interesting seeing, especially like when exploring astrology and like in our own self explorations, to think back to like those childhood memories too, of when we felt something a certain way, and seeing the way that the different energy has manifested itself. Because it can like glean just a different part of you that you have overlooked, or you know, haven't given that attention to, which comes back to like that nurturing of those parts of our psyche that may be embedded in that 12th house structure, to, you know, give it some attention, and that there's an action there that can be paired with a beautiful service. That really highlights something that we've gone through, a pain point that we've gone through ourselves and are able to help others with.
Wow, that's so beautiful. It just like what you're saying reminds me of being a mirror or a reflection for someone else, and helping someone through our own gifts that people can see that we don't necessarily see. I think that's like feels very 12th house to me, where you have all these abilities, these gifts that are hidden from your actual self, from your actual conscious, right? Whereas like your teachers around you, all these people around you are like, oh no, you are this like person that's shining in these areas to like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to place you in these positions. When you're not necessarily being like, okay, I want to do that. You're not consciously making that decision.
Thinking,
You're being placed there. And I almost want to say this reminds me of projection. Like people are projecting maybe some image on you. And it could be that you are really that fucking talented and they're like, no, you are meant to do this thing, you know, you're meant to serve in this way, and you almost fall into that service, which is like exactly what you're talking about. It's this, I guess, this mirror that you can't see, you know, this like this image that you can't see that's like very in the undercurrent, but yet everyone else can tap into that for you, that they can reflect that for you, which is so powerful.
Wow. Yeah, that is I like, that other people tap into that we might not always, because it's this lucid realm that, you know, other people might be tapping into something, and it's like, hey, I want to invite this out of you, you know, or invite it to come to the surface.
That just reminded me of, I feel like that energy can manifest in a very constructive way or a destructive way. You know, it could be like someone being placed in a position just like you and mentoring other people, or being placed in like these power dynamics and using that power for controlling or manipulation, right? It's like it could be used. That's why I'm like, I feel like the 12th house is such a powerful house, because it's the way people can navigate, you know, things that you can't see. So yeah, I mean, it's so good.
It's felt, it's something that's felt. It's so felt. And I mean, it's that unconscious space. And it's so interesting how it's like that unconscious brain. And then, you know, we bring it into like that more structured Virgo, like ruled by Mercury, kind of still like headspace, but it just like channels it into something a little bit more like concrete, that like this is a little piece of the entire expansive thing that we're able to put into action and into service. And it comes from just a tiny little slice of intel from this like undercurrent, this background, this mystery. It's like the well is a mystery, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I want to see if we can actually talk into what it'd be like to have certain planets there and what that would manifest like, because you just talked into having your sun in this 12th house, right? People seeing you as this, seeing your gifts, seeing what you're really good at, and being able to place you into these areas that you're not necessarily like, oh yeah, okay, that is what I'm good at. It's
like specifically serving a group of like a specific person that's like has felt incarcerated or has felt like they're in a separate group than someone else, that Pisces like martyrdom, that's like, I need to separate myself or I get pushed off, you know, that you end up feeling that. It's an interesting like thing for like Pisces probably, but being seen through that type of service. Like the way we shine, the way that, you know, we express things like that.
Yeah, I love that you bring in this piece about incarceration and institutions, because that is a very big theme of 12th house, is what you are locked into basically is formulated by what the conscious thinks, what the collective thinks, right? Even in our system now with like prisons, right? It's like
totally. Wow. Yeah.
Like the unconscious space is then being informed by the collective thought about a certain group of people. And that's what deems people as criminals, people that need to be locked up or in prison, whatever it is. But you see over time that changes because the collective changes. The collective, let's just say, for example, like on marijuana, right? Like people are being incarcerated for having marijuana or being in possession of it in certain places. And in California, it like completely went legal. And like, it's kind of like, well, the collective thought on this thing changed. So then the people who are then incarcerated change as well. And the institution then changes, right? And so it's like,
oh, that's interesting.
What is the collective thinking about a group of people? And how is that, right? How is that undercurrent making a change to like the waves that are happening onto society?
Wow.
And yeah, that's
no,
just
that's
like
such a great note.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. Also, things like that where you look at and you're like, okay, well, you know, that needs to change. Well, how can we then change the collective thought? How can we change the vibration in which people think about a certain group of people?
Yeah.
And I think that's why this conversation about the 12th house is so on point right now, because it's uncovering all of these hidden collective thoughts.
Yeah.
You know,
that sorrows need to be castaways and things that you don't want to, that you don't even know exist. It's not even like you're unburying anything. You just don't even know that they exist. They're off radar.
Yeah, it's pretty again, the 12th house is such a well.
I know.
Like, I feel like we've been so focusing on the 12th house because it requires so much depth. And so, okay, let's go back to the planets. And so we talked a little bit about the sun being in the 12th house. Like, if you have the sun sign in your 12th house, how would that manifest? I feel like there's going to be aspects of your life that are hidden from you, hit like very key themes that you are very like close to, but you just cannot see unless someone else is saying, you're really good at being an artist, or you're really good at this thing, like you should tap into that. And then being like, oh yeah, okay, like that does fit with like my values and my morals and like my purpose in my life. I feel like you can also even rule like certain institutions that you're put into. Like if you have, I want to say like Sagittarius there, in the 12th house, then maybe you are going to be in higher education. Maybe you are going to be deeply steeped in philosophy and institutions that are very focused in that.
And any planet there too, it's like perceiving it as like that energy, specifically of like the sun, like the way we express our vitality, like the way we move forward and like shine, truly like shine and smile. That kind of being veiled or like under the fog, or like incarcerated behind bars, but to look into like that niche thing that you might be really interested in, that could also be like casted off and casted away. Or maybe it's working with people who are like that, or who have that like collective, dismemberment to it. And then like, so that would be like expression. And then something like the moon would completely change the flavor of like, well, how like, because it brings it so much more personal to like our lived body and ancestral experience too, of like how have my emotions felt incarcerated? How have they felt like behind bars? Have I always felt in touch with them? And how does that connect to how I feel on a daily basis? It's like coming back to our relationship to the energy of the planet, because it is so, because it's in the 12th house, it's like that well, and just taking the little bits of information that bubble up from it as they do and putting it into that like 6th house action. But do you have anything else to say about like the moon being there?
Yeah, I almost feel whatever planet is in there has an elusive energy to it.
Yeah.
So, I can speak specifically from my experience of having the moon in the 12th house and it being in Sagittarius. It's like, yeah, there has been always this theme of me grappling with my emotions and being like, why do I feel so stuck in this? Why do I feel a
Mhm.
prisoner almost
Mm.
to some sort of depression that I've felt in my life? And how do I then, yeah, move myself out of that or become more conscious of what's causing that? What's the root of
Mhm.
these deep feelings that I'm having? And so if you have your moon in the 12th house, I feel that you have a very special, unique way of tapping into the collective consciousness, definitely for sure. You
Oh,
could,
experiencing that in your body.
yeah, I
Mm.
mean, even like intuitively, you receive messages from the collective, I feel like very strong. Like, this is something that I've talked about with many people is like, I can pick up on trends that are going to happen
Mm.
very easily. Like, I can pick up on the collective consciousness
I
a
feel like that's
couple,
such a 12th house thing. Definitely picking up on trends that are going to
yeah,
happen and be expressed into like the first house. That's like the eye.
yeah. I mean, I think
Yeah.
I pick up on that emotionally. Like
Mm.
the heaviness and the intensity that I've been feeling is like, okay, that's from the full moon and what the collective is going to
Mm.
be feeling around that. You know,
Mm.
that's something that I feel can be really like a strong quality of moon in the 12th house is, being able to channel directly from source, directly from the consciousness, like collective. And also, I want to say another aspect of this is, that motherly connection, especially because like moon rules our mother, our connection with the maternal
Mhm.
aspects of ourselves is, yeah, that relationship with the feminine energy may be hidden for a long time, maybe
Mm.
kind of under the surface, and you don't really know the role it has in your life. I mean, that's been my experience for sure of like
Mhm.
not really feeling comfortable with like being in my feminine energy and not really having a strong relationship with my mother to now I'm actually coming into that like, no, my feminine energy is what makes me this creative, juicy being, and like, and how can I then like understand that, take what I'm receiving from like collective about the feminine energy and bring that into my service, bring that into
Mhm.
something I can teach people about.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So at least that's how it's manifested for me. So it really could rule anything around, yeah, even very personal issues about ourselves that we keep hidden from people,
Yeah.
and things that like fulfill us like on a very deep level that we're like, oh, I can't talk
Mhm.
about this, right? Or
Mm.
it's like
Yeah.
something that you feel in your body, but you just like won't consciously speak about. It's
Admit.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's this kind of like secrets, but like even a secret that you don't
Yeah.
know. Because like eighth house is more secrets, where the
Yeah.
12th house is like more, yeah, it's like the secrets that you don't know that
Yeah.
are
Yeah. That
secrets,
you're
right?
keeping from yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, or like the collective secrets. Like
Yeah.
everyone, I feel
That's
like,
true.
has secrets that everyone else has as well. Like people talk about certain things and people don't talk about certain things because shame and guilt is very structured by the society. It's
Mhm.
very much construed about like what the society thinks and what's appropriate culturally. So
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
that it's like when the collective changes, I think that's when like the 12th house changes too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so let's talk about Mercury being in this
Mm.
placement.
Man, I feel like my thoughts would be all over the place.
I
But also it
know.
does, any of these like personal planets in the 12th house, they would all speak to connecting to that like subconscious channel, that collective, in terms of like what thoughts are running through your head that maybe might not that you might disown, like, oh, I can't think that, I can't speak that, I can't express that. And revisiting the can't as, well, how is what I'm interested in, maybe that niche thought that you have, or that approach or way of processing or speaking something, really being, again, like connecting to how you're here to serve, or what you're meant to culture inside of yourself. It always too, I feel like, speaks to what we can personally experience and connect with. It's like just a like personal growth, personally growing with your mind and your words and your headspace. What do you think?
Yeah, immediately I think of somebody that's just like profusely writing all the time, and they just maybe don't know why, and they just like, they feel this like very deep connection to speaking and writing, and yeah, just being so cerebral.
Yeah.
And that being limiting to themselves,
Mm-hmm.
like holding them back from being in flow, or
Yeah.
fully being present with themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then like not knowing why. I feel like Mercury is also the way we express ourselves and how we communicate.
Mm.
And it could be that you hold a lot of things back, right?
Oh,
You
yeah.
hold a lot of things back, like you don't speak your truth.
Mm.
And that feels very uncomfortable for you, right? Or that you speak, but you're not fully sharing. You're not fully sharing
Mm-hmm.
things that are happening, or even it could also be this like that you're sharing like maybe things that aren't yours because you're like channeling from like the
Yeah.
collective.
Yeah. I almost feel like mentally it could feel a bit like ungrounded, and like, what thoughts are mine?
Yeah.
What, like, what am I actually trying to say here? There could be like that Pisces confusion there. And especially like if what you said about maybe like stuffing it in could lead to that almost like depressive nature as well. Just feeling like you can't quite grasp or understand. You know.
Yeah, I feel that if someone does really struggle with that, is finding a purpose into your writing or your speaking. Like what purpose, what is the underlying thing that is driving you to write? Is it that you want to serve people in a certain aspect that you feel really passionate about, and not getting lost in like the nuance of being so dreamy in your writing and stuff like that? Because I feel like, yeah, you can get lost in that well, and
Yeah.
Mercury wants more of like okay, I'm going to give structure, I'm going to give kind of organization to my communication here.
Yeah.
And so yeah, okay, let's go into Venus in the 12th house. I love talking about Venus.
I know, me too. Oh my goodness.
My immediate thought about this is someone who is super beautiful and they don't know it. Someone who's just like, just embodies that like very gorgeous, beautiful energy, and they don't see it in themselves, and they've struggled with it, and they felt trapped and maybe not seeing themselves in the mirror accurately. But yeah, other people are being like, this is what you look like, this is how beautiful you are, but they're like, I don't see that.
Like disowning beauty.
Yeah.
Their own beauty.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also maybe it could be, you might have, almost want to say, you might have certain health conditions or even mental health conditions that, oh, there's a butterfly in here.
I just saw it fly across the street.
Did you just see that?
I did.
Amazing. Yeah, that's a sign. So I was just gonna say that the Venus being here could even represent certain health conditions, I feel like that you're not owning in yourself.
Yeah, because it's
And
about receiving. What are we not like receiving? And not necessarily in terms of like the moon and like nurturance, but like in love and what we really need to support ourselves. Yeah. Yeah, because that I feel like if you're not receiving what you need to receive, I mean, that would be like your health would be stifled from that, your vitality.
I almost want
It's
to
like
say,
keeping it all flowing through, not getting like too stuffed up in terms of like, how do I like keeping the give and the receive open.
I mean, it could also be that you attract partners and you don't know it. Like you're attracting like amazing people who just like are in love with you, and yet you are just, you can't see it. It's that,
Yeah.
it's like it's hidden, it's underneath the current of there's someone in your life that like really loves you and wants to like build a relationship with you, but yet you don't know how to receive that love or give that love back.
Displaced self-value.
Yeah, definitely. Anything else around the Venus and
No,
in
let's go
12th
to
house? Mars? Okay.
Yeah.
So Mars in 12th house.
Like what's my ambition? Like what direction do I want to go in? Like not in my word, not literally in my words, but from that perspective of Mars, like what direction do I want to go in? Yeah, because it's speaking to like that masculine energy.
I almost want to say it's the energy that maybe is fighting or going after something that you don't even really know what it's for. Like you might cause conflicts that you're being driven by something,
like questioning what's driving me right now. Is it something like, does it belong to me or does it belong to something else? Maybe what I feel driven to do isn't mine. Maybe it's someone else's impression or would be like a collective impression. But also perhaps that could be like a really like a very aligned drive. It's like really believing in that collective thing. It's like the collective will probably fuel the actions, but just connecting back to like, is this like truly is this serving me again, like serve or or go in the opposite direction and it's not fulfilling, in a different direction.
Yeah, I definitely see that as like Mars being the warrior for something that's in the collective, and them like knowing that they are connected to it, but then they're just like, I'm doing this because there's another force that's
oh, that's
me.
Beautiful. Being driven by like an unknown outside force to serve the greater, because all these like personal planets there, it's like this greater collective service. Innately having that expression there is going to, when we tap into it in a way that feels really good to our bodies, will serve the greater. And man, that's totally exemplified with Mars there for sure, because it's that drive, collective drive.
Yeah, definitely. I also feel like this energy I feel like it could be about the masculine as well, and that how is the masculine then manifesting itself in your life? How is it, how are you going about, even how are you even going about like certain institutions, or like how are you working towards certain issues? And it's that, again, that warrior energy in terms of,
I love that you mentioned, it's like collective warrior for the collective.
Is there any other planets? So we talked about the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars. Is there any other planets that you want to highlight here?
I feel really content with those because I feel like we feel those ones so intimately. And once we get into like Jupiter and Saturn, it's so much more of a different conversation, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I guess the last thing that I really want to talk about is transitioning from Pisces into Aquarius. Like, I feel like that needs to come in a little bit here because there is this strong pull towards going into Aquarius energy. I see it all the time where more people are leaning towards, you know, making everything accessible, you know, humanitarian projects and people giving back to the earth, people coming in tune with their own energies and their own purpose and what they're wanting to serve the collective with. And I feel like there's a lot to speak on about here, in terms of like Pisces being this energy of, you know, like losing a sense of yourself with the collective, and, you know, Aquarius being like, let's bring it back. Let's actually understand how we can serve the collective in our own unique expression, in our own authentic expression. And yeah, it's like so powerful because this 12th house and the 6th house axis speaks directly into that. It's like, what in the collective consciousness is going on, and how can we then serve with our 6th house day-to-day activities, routine,
through our unique body, our unique circuitry, and the way that things will end up finding us and filtering through it.
Yeah, and so I feel like you could even go through all of these different houses and be like, look at it in that perspective of like, okay, well, how does this serve the collective change that's going on? You know, because when we're talking about transitioning from this, like the age of Pisces to the Aquarius, I think there's like a lot of the 12th house that's changing, the collective thought process that's changing. Things that are hidden in this are now coming to surface and are changing what it's like to live and be a human on this earth, you know, and that directly changes our 6th house expressions. So
that's so true. Everyone being connecting to their individuality, and that every individual is a gift, you know, their own freaky gift to the world. And moving away from that confused displacement of, you know, belonging to something, well, I want to say like a confused displacement of something bigger than myself, but really like taking what's bigger than me and living it, you know, uniquely. And that kind of like rogue uniqueness is needed to completely pivot, pivot the way humans, you know, walk on the earth, you know. It's needed, those different ideas, the humanitarian efforts, little new things that pop up here and there. The accumulation of all of that individuality, I mean, inherently would support a completely different reality.
It's time to embrace your freakiness.
Specialness,
and tapping into, you know, what the 12th house has to teach you, you know, the collective, and listening to that and tuning in to that innate connection that you have to everyone else around you, and
then connecting it to how it feels in our bodies and what that looks like played out in real time in our lives, like our waking tangible lives. What does that manifestation look like?
I love that. So good. And I just want to say thank you, Alaina, for coming on and talking about this with me.